at the beginning of the movie, I was like, what am I watching here? During that intro of him getting turned down by like a 25-year-old woman, and he's like 8 years old. I was like, what is this movie?
You want to know something?
Drive-by movies you're watching.
Fresh releases.
My name is Blaze.
And my name is James.
And this week we're talking a brand new film to Apple TV Plus, Cha Cha Real Smooth.
Growing up is hard.
Is he your soulmate?
Do you believe in soulmates?
I think we all have a ton of soulmates.
How many soulmates?
For you, like 4.
How many do you have?
Like 1,200.
Cha Cha Real Smooth is the second film from Cooper Raiff. It's about a young man who works as a bar mitzvah party host and strikes up a friendship with a mother and her autistic daughter. So this, as Blaze said earlier, just hit Apple Plus. Cooper, director I haven't heard of. I know he directed a movie before this called Shithouse, I believe it was called. Dakota Johnson helped back this movie, I assume, because that movie probably got good word of mouth. And Blaze, how'd you hear about it? What made you want to check it out? And what'd you think?
So this movie was like the Sundance darling, coming out of Sundance this year, purchased by Apple, and kind of going on the trend of what we've been talking about a lot this year about films being purchased from Sundance, immediately being available within 6 months. This is here on Apple TV 6 months later. So I felt like we had to check this out because it was just the movie that everyone was talking about coming out of Sundance. And I just want to know what you thought of the film.
Okay. Overall, I did like it. I'm glad to see that almost that mumblecore feels coming back, because this movie is pretty straightforward. Not really a whole lot happens. It's stuff I've seen before in constant Joe Swanberg, Mark Duplass style movies, but seeing it from a young new voice was awesome. I doubt Cooper is 22, the age he's playing in this movie. I assume he's probably more in his mid-20s, but not much older than 22. I assume he's like 25 or so. But
Bingo.
You know, yeah. Oh, I guess I'm right. Yeah, I just figured that was the case. And I mean, he looks 22. He looked the part and stuff. But yeah, no, he's actually a really good actor. And directing wise, I mean, nothing stood out director wise, but he still directed everyone great. Like, of course, like, you know, all the great performances we get out of this movie is thanks to him and everything. But like, you know, cinematography wise, editing wise, like, I know those are other people's jobs, but he's the one calling the takes and stuff, though. None of that really stood out, but still, this is a great movie. I did like it, despite not really liking his character. Like, his character has a lot of charisma, and he's a likable person, but also can be a jerk at times too, during certain moments. But overall, he does have a great heart. But yeah, like, other than those like minor complaints, like, it's a solid movie.
Yeah, definitely. I have to agree with you there. I think it was just this film, I don't feel like came out of left field by any means, but I do feel like it's very different than really much of the stuff that we're getting, especially in theaters. I think you nailed it with this. Goes back to being kind of like this evolution of mumblecore. It feels like mumblecore was just kept evolving, and eventually like a young filmmaker like Cooper here has kind of like evolved it into something that is kind of its own. It takes all the influences of mumblecore, but this film, I do have a significant amount of gripes with it, but I feel like this film has enough polish to where most people wouldn't see like, or even make the connection if they had no knowledge of mumblecore, obviously, that this was, you know, something that was, you know, maybe super micro budget. Not saying that this film is by any means, but this film definitely takes a lot of its influence from a lot of those early micro budget, I think around the 2010s, like, films. It just feels like it has that kind of vibe going, like a Mark Duplass or Joe Swanberg elements in this film. But this film obviously doesn't feel like that. It has just Dakota Johnson really, and a couple other actors that you'll recognize from things, but it doesn't have a crazy star-studded cast or anything. But it does like feel like something that would appear, you know, on Apple TV Plus. We got Coda last year, which kind of was along the same lines of not having a ton of, you know, really big talent, but then that went on to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. I don't think that this film will do that, but it was interesting. I feel like this film fills that niche that Apple really wants to fill with their feature films. You know, this is called Apple TV Plus, and I do feel like this film almost feels like a television episode of a sitcom that everyone's watching. But it's interesting in that sense, because this is a feature film. You could just tune in, and this film does such a great job of building up those characters to where it feels like, you know, a TV show that everyone knows all the characters from, and is a relatable situation that, you know, a couple people might be going through. And this film just nails that niche, I feel like.
Yeah, it really does. Like, you know, I remember in our early 20s and stuff, like, you know, we're all trying to figure ourselves out for the most part. And it's very easily relatable for a lot of people. And like I said, like, his character can kind of be frustrating at times. Then I have to remember back in those ages, like, I probably frustrate a lot of people, parents, people I was dating, my friends as well, too. And, you know, they bring that to life pretty well, too. And like, you know, despite him being not the most likable during certain moments, though, you do root for him for the most part, too, despite him trying to be a homewrecker kind of towards the well, actually that's pretty much the plot, him trying to be a homewrecker. And you don't really get a good vibe from Dakota Johnson's fiance, but like, you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, there's not too much information about him. We just see what Cooper sees through the eyes, and he's looking at him through the eyes of jealousy, and just sees him as like, you know, kind of like not the most caring there, like I guess like just overall in the moment there for them person, but it's because he doesn't really know them, doesn't get to see the good side of him. And Dakota Johnson's character does get to see that, I guess, but just like, I like that aspect of us having to relate to him and seeing things like as perfect as he does, and everyone appreciates that he sees the best in everyone and everything. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, he's gotta, like, you know, move on and stuff. And I like that they set him up. Like, at the beginning of the movie, I was like, what am I watching here, during that intro of him getting turned down by like a 25-year-old woman, and he's like 8 years old. I was like, what is this movie? And then but like, you know, I liked that it set him up as like just someone who like falls hard and gets heartbroken hard, very much so. And, you know, like favorite moment of the movie, I have to say, is like him, you know, like getting in a fight with his brother, not wanting to give him advice, and then the next day just like saying, like, no, I was a piece of crap, don't listen to me, like I was just going through, like, that felt very real and stuff, like the way I would treat my sister whenever she needed help, and I'd be a jerk, but then, like, you know, at the end of the day, I like love her and stuff, and like would do anything for her. But just like in those moments, like sometimes we just, like, a lot of movies don't have those kind of moments, I feel like, where it makes the main character, like, it's either you have to like him the whole movie, and I like that this character is a little bit mixture of like, just like, no, he has his, like, he's a character that you're rooting for and you're watching throughout the movie, but he has his down moments that we can all relate to.
Yeah, definitely. I thought Cooper did a great job of just balancing, like, there's not a ton of characters in this movie, but there's a great job of just kind of building enough character development and having all the characters kind of like desires almost like line up, but then not at the same time. And then I do feel like there's almost this like twist at the end, because I feel like maybe if this was like 10, 15 years ago, this film would have ended with, you know, him just successfully home wrecking, and this being like, because he's the protagonist, you know, like I just feel like that was kind of the movie that I expected. And it's kind of put on its head of like, this is more about, you know, shaping the man in which he's becoming, instead of, you know, just getting everything he wants. Like, I felt like it was really done in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so like Cooper, you know, I really want to check out his first movie now too. I'm not sure where it's streaming at, but like, I hope he doesn't go, like, he kind of has it written all over him, like where he's gonna get swooped up by like Marvel or something. And I really hope that's not the case. Like, he kind of, like, with a movie like this where it's, you know, it sounds like it's a critic success, and, you know, whether or not it gets a huge draw through Apple TV Plus, anyone who's like a Marvel fan will have never heard of this kind of movie and stuff. And when it has it written all over him that he's just gonna get swooped up by, I'm getting Destin Creighton vibes off of him and stuff, you know, swinging hard with I Am Not a Hipster, and then killing it with Short Term 12. I hope that doesn't happen here with this director, but because this is, I guess, Jim Cummings is a popular film director who's like making, you know, these cult movies. Like, we reviewed Wolf of Hollow Snow, and we kind of talked about how he's not the most likable actor in that movie. Like I was just like, why does he keep putting himself in those movies? He's not that great of an actor. Like I like the vibe that he goes for in his movies, but it just didn't work for me. But Cooper has that in this movie though, I'd say.
Yeah, most definitely. That's actually an interesting comparison. I didn't really see it, but it's very similar because they're both actor. I'm assuming, I don't really know too much about Cooper, to be honest. Like just a little, I was actually looking into, doing as much investigating as I could this week, kind of after I watched the movie. But they both have that kind of actor turned director vibe going on. And I mean, both at any moment's notice, I feel like Jim Cummings could be directing the next Doctor Strange movie. Cooper, I'm going to say the next Spider-Man trilogy, probably. After we get the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, he's for sure directing the next Spider-Man. And it's going to be kind of like the beginning of this film. It'll be like a young Spider-Man. Like he's like a kid almost. It's just something. I just feel like that's the way in which we're going. They need more Spider-Man for the Spider-Verse style thing, like they need just different aged ones for when they all meet up.
Yeah. Where do you go after Far From Home? Yeah, and that's where it is, I guess. And bring in, I guess, the animated version into the movie. Might as well. Oh, it's a different universe. Let's bring in the animated Roger Rabbit style into the live action Spider-Man movies.
So one last thing I did want to bring up, about this movie was, and I was curious kind of how you felt about it. I felt like this movie, and okay, so I definitely have a little bit of sheen on all like the mumblecore movies that I used to know and love, but they're not the most cinematic movies ever made. I think that's a lot of the shit that they constantly got was like they're not cinematic at all. This film feels like even just talking about filming, not even talking about script and everything. I think script is where this movie shines completely. And that's where it's getting all its love. And I definitely have a lot of love to throw at it when it comes to the script and the acting. But when it comes to like the cinematography in this movie, I didn't feel like it was like bad by any means. Like I could tell every shot's lit. It's not like a mumblecore movie where maybe they set up one light and it was kind of shitty, But I do feel like this film is almost so subtle that it almost feels like a television show, like the way it's filmed and shot.
No, you're right, because you're right. Despite like mumblecore movies always looking like crap, it wasn't until the more like modern ones when like the Duplass brothers started getting more work, like Cyrus and stuff, and Jeff Who Lives at Home. I remember those are the first ones that kind of looked a little bit more cinematic. Again, though, the cinematography is like not great. It's just like they finally started getting better cameras and better lighting, per se. But yeah, I got that vibe overall, I'd say, with this though too. Like nothing stood out. Kind of brought that up earlier, but like just going along with what you're saying though, like yeah, it didn't stand out, but like did have that almost TV show feel. And I'm not sure if it's just because of the location restraints, but not that this story kind of calls for multiple locations. But yeah.
Well, I guess partly you're right, the locations are kind of all in like dark kind of bar mitzvah, so it's kind of it's not like a club, but it's like a banquet hall with some rave lights. I've been to my fair share of those kinds of parties, and yeah, I feel like this definitely, I mean, it captures that vibe, but when it comes to cinematic, like it definitely doesn't they didn't capture it. I mean, I guess that experience isn't really cinematic, but I feel like given the right cinematographer, maybe they could have made some of the imagery in this film pop a little bit more than it was given. But then again, maybe dialing back on the cinematography in this film allowed that script to shine more. So I think when it comes to the the direction, the acting, and the writing are definitely Cooper's strong suits. Maybe with future projects, we'll see him really blossom into becoming a very cinematic filmmaker.
Yeah, and I assume like he's not going to have any problems getting a third feature under his belt soon. So like, not saying like Marvel's going to swoop him up ASAP, but I wouldn't be surprised though if like someone in that Marvel, DC, or legendary Monsterverse tries to swoop him up next and stuff too. And deserved, but like he's great in this, and look forward to seeing his future stuff. I'm glad that Dakota Johnson produced this movie, and I'm sure other actors and big producers that we're aware of like helped bring this movie to life. But I'm glad that the first movie caught the attention. Now I want to check it out and stuff too. So let us know what your thoughts on the movie are. If you have an Apple Plus account, Apple TV Plus, go check out the movie. Come back here, leave a comment letting us know what you thought about the movie.
And guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get all of our latest updates.
And if you can't get enough of us here on YouTube, be sure to catch all our social media links down below in our description box for Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Anyways, guys, that'll conclude this week's episode. Tune in next week for a brand new episode of Fresh Releases.